Hey, welcome into Chatterbox Bearcats, the midweek show. I'm your host, Nick Niehaus, joined always by Eric Lilly, aka Bearcat Bunch on Twitter. You can follow us both on Twitter at Bearcat Bunch for Eric, at Nick Niehaus _ for myself. Lilly, we call it the midweek show, but we kind of cheated a little bit this week, considering Christmas was on a Wednesday. We're recording on Thursday night, set to be released on Friday. So I guess it's the end of the week show this week. Maybe we need to workshop a new name for our show. Do you have any ideas? I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh man, I gotta think. We're real flexible here, you know. We show up when we're needed. We're spending time with the family. This is we're here.
We're here.
2 days late.
Yeah, 2 days late.
I gotta think on the name. Give me an hour.
Yeah, well, okay. Maybe by the end of the show we'll have some ideas. If not, you people can give us some ideas, and maybe we'll say something on next week's show about it. But anyway, still lots to talk about. The Cats haven't played since Sunday. They play on Monday, but plenty to talk about. We're going to tie a bow on the non-conference slate. We're going to preview Kansas State opening up Big 12 play on the road on Monday night. And we have some mailbag questions. So we're also going to get into a little bit of a brief football portal wrap up. We have 3 really good questions to talk about, both basketball and football. So let's just get right into it, Lilly. I tasked you with coming up with a grade for our non-conference performance. I have my grade. I'm curious what yours is because you are the eternal optimist. When it comes to basketball, pretty optimistic myself, considering I love Wes Miller and I love this team. I have not been hiding that all year long. If you heard some of the football shows, you would hear that I'm not the eternal optimist. Lilly, he keeps it straight and narrow for us when it comes to both sports. But Lilly, give me your grade, and also I'm going to ask you for your MVP, your most important player, and the X factor of this team so far this season. So let's start off with grades. You give yours, I'll give mine, and then we'll get into the specific players. What's your grade on the non-con?
I'm going B+. I think that might surprise you. But the reason why is because I'm just as high on this team as you are. Maybe higher, maybe a little lower. But we're both high on the team. And we lost to Villanova with Skillings out. So, I understand that in my grade. But I didn't like the Xavier performance. I know that game is that game. We won. And then we had a couple flat moments recently against Howard. B+, A-, I'm fine with. I think if you go over that, you're being a little bit of a homer or not hard enough on them. And if you go under that, you're possibly unhinged with your expectations, but because we killed Georgia Tech, I don't care what the score of the Dayton game was. We killed Dayton, destroyed them. Got a little too cocky, which is fine. I'd rather win and be cocky than try to dribble it out, So it was lost a little control in that game, but I think through the 11 games that B+, and here I am talking through it. Maybe A- is the right grade. It's right there for me.
Did you read my notes? You stole my notes.
Oh shit!
I got a B+. I got a B+ as well. You're a smart man. Not because you agree with me, but I got him at a B+ for all the same reasons. They'd be getting a B if we had Dan Skillings for Villanova. A win there, and I think it's an A+ because of those reasons you mentioned. We didn't just win all of these games. We smoked all of the 300-plus Ken Palm teams, which is why we were high in the net and also sticking around in the AP poll because we played nobody. We played nobody to start off the year, and then we lose to Villanova. So everybody who wanted us outside of the top 25, I didn't necessarily disagree with in terms of what we deserved. We're definitely a top 25 team, but we didn't have our best player against Villanova. So that's why I'm giving it a B+, because we smoked all the bad teams. Yeah, we hit a bump in the road without Dan Skillings, but then we beat Xavier, and then we whooped Dayton's ass. And like you said, I don't care what the final score is. you take down Xavier the way you did. Yeah, those scary, but then you come out and you little brother Dayton, who had a ton of hype coming into that game. So having the bragging rights in the state of Ohio, because I know the game didn't count, but Ohio State, we whooped their ass too. It's pretty awesome. So I'm going with a B plus. Now moving on. MVP. Who's your MVP? And you know what? Let's just rattle off. Actually, you know what? We have plenty of time, right? This is a podcast. This isn't a TV show. We got plenty of time. Who's your MVP? I'll give mine.
This is a hard question. I'm gonna say Simas, and it pains me to do this because I'm that guy. You know, I think I'm a little down on Simas compared to most UC fans. Not in a bad way though. I think he's awesome. His 3-point shooting just seems to get us out of so many funks, and that's why I'm picking him. Like, he's just shooting the crap out of the ball. And anytime, you know, we're still growing offensively. We're not an elite offensive team. I hope we can be, but when we go through those droughts, it feels like Simas just pops out of nowhere and hits a three. Like, we're down 53-46 for Xavier, and he hits that three. Then he hits a floater. And I obviously don't think he's a very good defender and has some flaws in his game, but he's shown up this year. He's shooting the crap out of the ball. He's shooting a ton of threes. His volume's up a little. His turnover rate is down. Like, we haven't seen as many of those like last year in transition, the lobs. His passing has been better this year, I think. And I was kind of thinking he couldn't get better because he just, if you look at his numbers, he's kind of had the same numbers every year in terms of like creation, turning the ball over. And it is out of conference play, so there's some potential stat padding with some of these games, but I'm going to say Simas so far, especially with how Dan was out. We needed somebody doing stuff like that. So that's my MVP so far.
Yeah, it's Simas. That's who I have as well. And I feel like this one was a layup to start because we'd be lost on offense without him. I truly think that he is the reason that we at least have some sort of go-to guy offensively other than Dan going baseline. I love when Dan goes baseline. It seems like, I said this the last podcast, Fran Fraschiller, somebody says he's the best baseline player in the country, but I truly think that we would not be as high of a level, and I'll get into this with my most important player, but he raises our level because of simply his shooting. I mean, he started off the year at 70% from three. He was top 2 in the country in field goal percentage. Now he's currently at 42% from three. Without that, do we beat Xavier? I'm not going to say do we beat Dayton because that was ugly. I mean, I think we still beat Dayton. I don't know if we beat Xavier. I don't know if we there was a game, and it's escaping me. I'm going to sound like an idiot. That he just helped me out, Lilly. He bailed us out in the second half with a couple big shots.
Was it Howard? Like, we had a pretty bad start. Like, it was 36-32 at half. And
I'm trying to think. Maybe it's just
18 points.
Yeah. It was one of those early games where he hit a couple big shots and I feel like it was a bailout.
You know what it was? It was probably NKU because
that's what it was. It was
we
the
did
NKU
that thing
game.
Again. Yeah.
Thank you, Lilly. You saved me.
Yeah.
It was NKU.
It was that game.
Yeah, it was that game. I can't believe I forgot that. But anyway, he's the MVP. I don't think it's a question. Now we get into a couple more difficult. And you know what? I bet our answers vary here. Most important player. Who you going with?
This is fun to like not totally prep on this stuff. I think so far this season, our most important player has been Aziz. And it feels weird saying that, but I think he's been improved from last year. Like, our lobs are popping. And with how frustrating last year was, just seeing, I know the Dayton game just happened, so this might sound crazy, but our lob game's been great. We're dunking the crap out of the ball, top 10 in the country in dunks. And it's a lot of it's Aziz. And I think, maybe your pick is someone else that's getting a lot of these lobs. But defensively, the first couple games, I was a little concerned. It seemed like he was away from the rim too much and gets lost every once in a while. But I think the past month or so, he's been just locked in. And he's going to have those stupid post-ups every once in a while, but we're seeing him less. He's just there, solid defensively, causes chaos on the boards, finishes lobs, and I think he's a little underrated by our fan base.
I think you bugged my phone.
Oh,
I think you bugged my phone. My most important player is Aziz Bandaogo. I don't think this is a question. Here's my take on the matter.
I might have to change my answer.
Well, yeah, if we have the same answer for the X Factor, then you have to give me a case for somebody else. We know, back to Aziz, we know what we're going to get from our best three, Simas, Dan, and Jizzle. Typically night in, night out, right? Those are our best three players. I don't think there's much of a question. Dylan Mitchell, you can make the case as probably the other most important player, but he's not giving us that production that those three are going to give us. He's not going to create a play. He might drive to the basket, right? But anyway, back to Aziz. He's somebody that if he is playing well, he raises the level of what this Bearcat team could be. That is something we're missing in the post. We're still missing a back to the basket game from Aziz, right? We're not going to have that. But if he's catching lobs, if he's grabbing rebounds, if he's given us some sort of offensive production, our ceiling gets way higher than it currently is. So I think he's important in the sense of, because he's been playing well the last two games. He's had back-to-back really good games, in my opinion. If he plays well, I think we are I don't want to put a round in the tournament, on this, but like we're the level of an Elite Eight team if Aziz is playing well. If he's not playing well and we have to rely on those three guys and maybe it's a bad shooting night, who knows what can happen? So I think he's important in the sense of if we get something from him, we're going to be damn good.
Yeah, and I think the Villanova game kind of signs off on what you're saying because he was crap versus Villanova and we looked like crap.
Yeah. So I think he's important. I think he's the most important player on this team. Now the X Factor is kind of hard to like, I mean, what's an X Factor really? This is a guy that gives you a spark. I don't know how to define it. Everybody listening is like, we know what an X Factor is. Who is yours?
I've got two, so you should go first. So
okay, I'll go. And you mentioned him on the most important player, catching the other lobs, Dylan Mitchell. And I think it's simple in terms of that guy can change the momentum of the game with one play. I mean, the highlight plays that this guy makes. Nobody watches ESPN or SportsCenter anymore. But, like, has any of his dunks been on SportsCenter top 10? If they're not, then they're simply not doing their job in checking out what this guy's been doing in Cincinnati. Because, and it's funny, every dunk he has, it's like off the wrong foot too, right? Am I the only one picking up on that? It's crazy. I've never seen anything like it. But the plays he makes do something. Like, yeah, it's 2 points on the scoreboard, but it gets everybody on their feet. It changes the trajectory of the game. Look what happened when everybody at Fifth Third finally stood up in the final 4 minutes of the crosstown shootout. Nobody was standing up on the sidelines in the first 36 minutes. And I was mad. I stand, behind the student section every single game. And I'm like, God, can people stand up? Then there's one big play. Everybody stands up. Dylan Mitchell has that ability to make everybody stand up and change the momentum. Who's your X Factor? And if one of them was Dylan Mitchell, let me know and give me the other one.
I would have been safe because it wasn't.
Oh,
I considered him as MVP so far though. But Simas won out on that. So no shots at Dylan. He's been amazing. And like you said, this fan base, we love hustle, steals, diving on the floor for a 50-50 and dunks. And he brings a lot of that. Like he's a hustler, gets the dunks, gets the people going. And we're going to need that this year because last year in the Big 12, I talk about this a lot, but it was just so much anxiety in that building. And we need stuff like that to happen just to keep people in it. Because we're still going to make mistakes, turnovers. We've still got some guys that are a little loose and cocky with the ball. You saw the end of the Dayton game. So we need these big moments to keep people in the game because the home field advantage does matter. So home court, still in football season here. But my X factor, I'm going Day. And I think he's been amazing since he came back. I think Jizzle's had a good season and his mid-range isn't falling. Like Jizzle's improved in all the ways I want him to. Defensively, his three ball looks better, knock on wood. Like it might just be that it's going in, but to me it looks better. Like there was something wrong with his shot last year, long range to me. Not a shot doctor here, but Day is that experienced veteran, much older than Jizzle, plays defense. Like if Jizzle's having a bad game, Day's that guy. Like that's gonna get us through that game. And then I think you could say the same thing for Jizzle being the guy when Day has a bad game. But Day's my X factor just because of like the elite defense. The three ball looks good. He just has an edge, like the Bearcat edge. Like I don't know why UC fans crapped on him all year last year. Like to me, he was just like a Bearcat the whole time. Like he plays hard. He's diving on the floor. He does a lot of dumb shit too, but he does everything you want as a fan, like to rally around him. And I think he's the X factor for this team to like reach the ceiling. And I also considered Hickman, who you can't see it yet, but maybe he will be. And then Betsy, which it's just simple like bench 3-point shooter X factor. But I'm going with Day pretty confidently.
Yeah, I like that answer. And you even put it out on Twitter last week. Is Day Thomas the most underappreciated Bearcat in the last decade? And I got to say, I racked my brain and I don't have a close second because I think you hit the nail on the head. I think he provides a spark off the bench. I think that's a good role for him. I think maybe part of the criticism was the fact that he was the starting point guard and everybody saw Jizzle as this up and coming star. I personally, had my qualms about Day Thomas. It would mainly stem from the fact that it seemed like he could get to the rim with ease and then not finish. And
those missed dunks.
Yeah, and the missed dunks. But I might have to take a pledge this year and not have anything bad to say about Day Thomas. I can't do that because this is what I do, and I have to speak freely on my mind, or else nobody would listen to us. But I love Day Thomas. He has been awesome.
I saw a couple people say Jennifer, and I think you could make a case for junior year Jennifer because even I just didn't really like him. But like senior year Jennifer was so good that he wasn't underappreciated.
Yeah.
So I think it's Day the last 10 years.
Yeah. I probably had a dumb answer with Landers just because he was on bad teams. And it's like in 20 years, when you talk about great Bearcats, are you going to mention Landers Nolly? You're not, but you should.
Yeah, he will definitely qualify in about 10 years just because people are probably going to forget about him because
he had a short stint, but he was awesome. So
he wasn't like Deontay Vaughn where he was here so long that he missed those good teams, but we all know him. Yeah. Landers was just 2 years.
Exactly. So I thought maybe Landers would be an answer, but still Day's. And also, this is worth bringing up because this happened last week. I don't even know if we mentioned it on the podcast, but for those who are not all over, the NCAA rulings, Lilly, you might want to help me on this because I don't read articles. I'm what
am I aggregating for?
I'm short attention span for sure. But JUCO players are now granted full 4 years of eligibility. So if you spent 2 years at JUCO, usually you only got 2 years in the NCAA. Now you get 4. So I think Day Thomas, and I've been searching all over the internet. I'm like, does this mean Day Thomas can be here 2 more years? And I've tweeted it, and nobody's told me I'm an idiot yet. So I'm pretty sure Day Thomas can be here 2 more years.
I think so. And I'm kind of like you. Sometimes I check out on certain topics like this Super League thing. I read the articles sometimes, but it's tough to just read the lawyer stuff. I hate it. When something official happens, then I'll care. But with this stuff, and then you see the JUCO thing, and then after that, now they're saying they might just go to a flat 5 years, as like it almost seems like it's a counter to like just stop the JUCO thing, and then make it so everybody gets 5 years. So now they're saying Simas might get another year, and it's
oh my goodness.
I don't know. I think it stinks for like freshmen who might not be able to go to college now because there's so many old guys, like 25-year-olds still playing. But, if it helps us, then, I'll tolerate it for a year or two with Day and Simas and stuff like that. But it doesn't mean he's coming back, and there are things that can happen because of it. Like maybe Jizzle leaves, maybe Tillery goes somewhere else because he was expecting to play a lot as a freshman. There's all sorts of things that can happen, and I think we'll probably be talking about this a lot in the offseason, in the spring probably.
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted, I was like, Tillery, Jizzle, and Day would be a nightmare for other teams. Now, granted, I'm gonna maybe look on the optimistic side and say it could happen that all three stay, just because we can run some of them out at the 2.
Yeah, and he's playing that 2-guard lineup sends a message to guys like Tillery, and if we bring all these guys back, we're gonna have a talk about preseason top 5 stuff, preseason top 10 for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, especially if Simas comes back, but I don't even want to talk about that because that doesn't seem like it's a possibility at the moment, but it could be. All right. We kind of tied a bow on the non-con. We got our grade. We both gave a B+. Our MVP, we both said Simas. Most important player, we both said Aziz Bandaogo. And X Factor, I say Dylan Mitchell. You say Day Thomas. Moving on, we got Big 12 play starting on Monday on the road at Kansas State. ESPN gives us a 74% chance to win. Kansas State is 6-5. They're currently riding a 3-game losing streak with losses to St. John's, Drake, and Wichita State, which they most recently lost by 19. Earlier in the year, they lost to LSU and Liberty. Woof. Bad teams that they are losing to. Wichita State by 19? Kansas State has the worst record in the Big 12. Initial thoughts on this, Lilly?
This is a fun one because there's some weird like correlations with Villanova. They have 9 days off before the game. They haven't beat anyone good. Before we played Villanova, they hadn't beat anybody, and they had lost to bad teams. Kansas State meets both of those requirements. Their best win is a neutral versus Longwood, which isn't an awful win, but it is. It's their best win. And they're kind of spiraling, it seems like. Achora quit the team. This is 2 years in a row now where Tang's kind of had a little drama. Somehow he got an extension in the middle of this and a bunch of NIL money to play with that just got thrown in the direction of Coleman Hawkins, who wasn't exactly a perfect fit on this roster, in my opinion. So much so that Achora quit because they're like vulturing each other's minutes, which team building is a skill. It's a strategy. Like, it matters. You can't just throw money at people and have it work out. And I think Kansas State is a pretty good example of a team that they've on like KenPom and stuff, they are spiraling. And like to like casual UC fans, they might not realize this, but I think Kansas State is that team that's just going to have a tough conference play. The players don't seem together. Their coach is an oddball, weirdo. Tang is just a weird guy. Like, he says things that coaches don't say. It's hard to imagine he's good at player relations based on the stuff that's happened the last 2 years. And they just got ran out at Wichita State. I think this is a pretty good barometer to see like this iteration with Skillings and Day back. I think this is a good one for us to be like, we're on from the Villanova thing. Like, we've moved past it. This is your chance to just show us that you've gotten better. And I know we beat Xavier and Dayton, and we looked really good versus Dayton. But I'm the type of guy, I want to see it multiple times so that I could trust it. And, we mentioned a couple of podcasts ago how we're trying to get over the hump of beating Xavier. And then after that, Chuck mentioned with Mo Egger, the next hump is winning 2 games in a row, 2 big games in a row. That's the first time we've done that under Wes. And now the next hump is just show it that we can trust it. Not like this roller coaster Big 12 thing that we did last year where we're just down a little too much. We need something more stable, something to believe in. And this is in Manhattan over Christmas break. It's going to be their worst crowd of the Big 12 slate, probably, unless they just really spiral. The students aren't there. This is the best spot you can have against this team, in my opinion. Now, I know having a week off might help teams like this, but it also might make it worse if it's as big as a train wreck as it looks. And I think we're going to be, Ken Palm says UC by 5. I wouldn't be surprised if the spread's like 6 or 7.
You bring up 2 things that I want to touch on and that I have in my notes, where you love this spot. I have 2 ways to view this game. How you just mentioned, loving this spot. We get Kansas State while they are spiraling and losing to bad teams. So we should just go in and take care of business on Christmas break. Or this is a game that they view as a get right. Now, usually when people say get right games, it's against bad teams. UC's not a bad team. But it's their Big 12 season opener. It's now or never. If they want to make the big dance, if they want a resume, it's going to have to start now because they have the players. Like you mentioned with Villanova, it's very similar. Villanova has Eric Dixon, who could be an All-American. I haven't checked up what he's done since Cincinnati, but he was averaging, 27 points a game, and then he scored 31 on us. They have talent. Villanova does. Kansas State has talent. Coleman Hawkins, talent. Doug McDaniel, talent. 2 of the biggest portal gets of the offseason last year. Doug McDaniel, a point guard for Michigan. Coleman Hawkins coming from Illinois. So those are the 2 ways to view it, right? I'm going to go with I love this spot from us because I think we are trending up. They're trending down. Go in, take care of business. You're the better team. Yes, they have talent. I want to see it like you mentioned. Also, the other point, what do you have, Lilly, real quick?
Yeah, the week-long break thing is like kind of what you're saying with, if they're bought in during this week, that things can change. Like they play TCU and Oklahoma State after us. If they beat us, they might win 3 in a row, and all of a sudden they're the hot name. So we're not in the locker room. I'm just reading what I see on Twitter and like things are happening where it's like, that's a red flag. That's a red flag. But, when you have a week off, if guys are bought in and then you come up with that, the zone that Villanova threw at us that made us look like we'd never played basketball before in the first half. If they do something like that, then they can change their whole season. So you're right. It did cross my mind. It's there, but I'm almost trying to speak it into existence to like this is a prove it game for Cincinnati again. Like prove that you're better right here. This is it.
Well, I want to talk about, and you're absolutely right, but I want to talk about you mentioning the relations with the players and Jerome Tang. So I Googled Doug McDaniel because let me tell you a brief little story here. I'm sitting on my phone on a Friday night about midnight on Twitter, and this burner with probably 12 followers tweets out, "Is Doug McDaniel quitting the team?" And so I go on a search and I'm like, okay, let me search Doug McDaniel on Twitter, go to latest. And there's like one other tweet. And it's like, what's going on with Doug McDaniel? And I'm like, okay, this is going to pop. Like he definitely quit the team. Stuff's going to happen. Nothing happens. And I mentioned it on the Dayton post game. So if you listen to that and you're like, what the hell is Niehaus talking about? That's what it was. I saw that Doug McDaniel quit the team from a random burner with no followers. With that being said, I tonight Googled Doug McDaniel. And the first 5 articles are Jerome Tang says he has a good relationship with Doug McDaniel. That is all I need to see to know that Jerome Tang does not have a good relationship with Doug McDaniel. So he's only averaging 9 points a game. He only got 5 minutes in the last game. I don't know what. I tried figuring out why. Do you know why he only got 5 minutes? I don't know.
There's that rumor you saw is actually the thing like in Trilly's Discord. Like there's a rumor going around he was like unhappy with NIL or something, and then was going to quit like Achor did, and then something happened and Kansas State fixed the problem.
Okay.
But so no, it is a thing. Like there are things happening in this program that shouldn't be happening during the season. Yeah. And I don't know why he played 5. I just noticed that.
Yeah, he wasn't playing, and I'm like, okay, that maybe he did quit. I didn't know. I didn't follow up on it until today. But with that being said, their two best players, or supposed to be their two best players, Doug McDaniel and Coleman Hawkins, are not even averaging double digits in scoring. Coleman Hawkins, 9.7 rebounds a game. It is Brendan Hawson leading the team in scoring with 14 points a game. He's shooting 43% from 3. He shoots a ton. And then David Ngisson, I didn't say that right, but that's his name, is next at 13.6 points per game. Those are the only two guys in double digits in scoring on this team. So definitely underperforming. I guess you mentioned it, like go and take care of business. Is there anything that kind of worries you about this game or that you see from their side, or let's like final thoughts on this game that you have?
Yeah, and there's a couple like the Xavier thing again. They're bigs like Coleman Hawkins and Ngesson. I'm sure I'm butchering that too, but
I think
they shoot threes. They just don't make them at a very good rate. So it's like this is just another one of those games where you don't want to get got by like a guy who doesn't usually do things like make the shot. And Doug McDaniel, he can just blow up whenever. Max Jones has been shooting really well for them, and Brendan Hawson. They're both shooting over 40% from 3. They're like they're both 6'4", 210. I think we're built to defend a team like this. Aziz isn't as bad as we think he is on the perimeter. So if Hawkins makes a couple early, like I think we're fine. But Day and Jizzle are both bigger than Doug McDaniel. Connor Hickman's the same size as these 6'4" guys, just a little smaller. We have wings all over the place. Like Skillings is bigger than these guys. We're bigger than them. And the big thing that I'm looking at this game, now that Skillings is back and, he just looks good, is Kansas State is 226th in defensive rebounding. If you have a team that isn't good at defensive rebounding, they're also not tall and potentially could quit. Like this is a team where if you get up big, they might just lay down. Like that's kind of what we're seeing here with this team. The LSU game they played earlier in the year, it was pathetic. Like they only lost by 11. It was just some garbage time backups were getting them back in the game. They got demolished. And it was a home game versus LSU. This is a team that's losing at home. Their fans are not bought in. It's not going to be a good environment. And I would just love it if we just dominate them on the boards, put them away, and kind of send a message to the league that we're for real.
I like that because, I mean, in terms of rebounding, I know the numbers, which rebounding is numbers. It's you got to rebound, tally it on the scoreboard. But Dayton, I keep going back to Dayton and just how we looked and how it seemed like we got every single ball that we went after. So I definitely like that. And I'm going to give you my
real quick. Before the Dayton game, we talked on here about how Dayton was elite at defensive rebounding.
Yeah.
And I mentioned Dan's back. Maybe we can, like, we're bigger. Maybe we can do something. Yeah. And we did it. Like, it wasn't even just all Dan. It was multiple guys. I think Dan has, like, that gravity thing going. Like, he's just all over the place, and it helps other guys too. And now we're playing a team that's awful at it. So maybe we just destroy them.
It's even worse. Yeah. Well, credit to you. One thing that, you mentioned before the Dayton game is you're like, we're just way bigger than them. And look what happened. So Listen to Lilly. He knows what he's talking about.
I get
That's the
lucky
moral.
sometimes.
No, you consistently prove yourself to know what you're talking about. Let's move on to the mailbag. And I didn't give my thoughts on Kansas State because I'm going to here. Let me pull up the questions. Bearcat Boom sent in a question. What are your expectations to start conference play, specifically the first 4 games? Arizona/Kansas State have not had a solid start to the season here, as we would have thought. Lilly, what are your thoughts on the first 4 games? This is a stretch that before the year we're freaking out about. What are your thoughts now?
This is tough because like last year I would say 2-2. I'd be like beat Kansas State, beat Arizona at home, and then like the other 2, it's Kansas and Baylor, away at Baylor. I want to say 3-1. I've watched Arizona a couple times. I've watched Baylor. I think we just match up so well against those teams. Like we're just more physical. We're bigger. And I know Arizona's got the big guys, but it's not all the way up and down the lineup. And I think you should be able to win 3 of those 4 if we're as good as I think we are. And ideally, it would be if I had to pick the 3 we won, it would be the 2 home games in Kansas State and be like, oh, we lost to Baylor at away. Who cares? But we're at this point here where we could win all 4 of these and we could go 2-2. And on paper, it wouldn't look bad if we did go 2-2, but it would feel horrible because it'd feel like we're just starting to get to where we were last year, sort of. So this is just a huge time to send a message to the fan base and just the program in general to be like, yo, we're here right off the bat. Buy your tickets, get in the arena. Like this is going to be a great Big 12 slate for us. And I love that we play Kansas State first, and then I love that we play Arizona before we play Kansas because I think those are the 2 we should win for sure. Not for sure, but those are the 2 we should win out of the 4, in my opinion.
I'll answer my expectations this way, and this is kind of a cop-out answer, so I'm sorry to everyone. But let me preface this with, if we're real, if we are a real threat, the floor is 2-2, and the expectation is 4-0. That's if we're a real ball club. We're on paper better than 3 out of 4 of these teams. And then the 4th team we have at home in probably what's going to be the most electric atmosphere I will have ever attended in my life. I'm sure a lot of people will have ever attended in my life. With that being said, if we win the first 3 games, because Kansas comes on the last game. So if we're 3-0 with Kansas coming in, that's going to be an insane atmosphere. That's if we're real. We will go 4-0. That's how I feel about this. And the floor is 2-2. With that being said, I'm expecting 3-1. Baylor has only lost to Gonzaga, Tennessee, and UConn. They only have 1 good win, though, against Arkansas. Kansas is legit, but you never know at home. You never know look, we beat them last year. I know it was their backups, but even in the game we lost to them on the road at Kansas, we were still very competitive. I mean, Dan Skillings allegedly was getting offers in the freaking handshake line. So, and that is not confirmed. Hey, look,
I've heard similar things.
All right. We're not journalists here, but I mean, people hear that. So I guess I might as well say it behind a microphone. But, yeah, I'm going to say 3-1, but look, if we're a real ball club, we can go 4-0, and that wouldn't shock me. But again, we don't know if we're real. We don't know to this point. Xavier's okay. Dayton apparently has a bunch of hype, but to me, after what I saw, they're not any good. But again, we made them look that way. So it's kind of tough. I just don't know yet. We just don't know. So expectations, I'll say 3-1, but I mean, 2-2, I'd be upset, but I think that's the floor.
And to your point about how big that game would be, if Like say we win 3 and Kansas is coming to town. Kansas plays West Virginia, UCF, and Arizona State. That could be like a top 10 matchup. It would be the biggest non-shootout home game in a maybe. I can't think of anything.
Ever? Of
Yeah,
our lives.
I don't want
Of
to say
our
ever, but
lives.
like it would
Yeah,
feel
of our
like
lives.
forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun to dream about. Let's make it happen.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess final answer. You said 3-1. I said 3-1. I can see 2-2. I can see 4-0. If we do any worse than 2-2, I'm quitting the podcast. All right, moving on to football. And that was a joke. I'm not going to quit the podcast. Anyway, what Dave Lanesh tweeted at me saying, what is your opinion of the recent retread hires with Frost and Rich Rod? If you haven't heard, Scott Frost back at UCF, Rich Rod is at West Virginia. Would you be willing to give Fickle another run in a year if Sat is gone? I'm curious your answer on this.
No. But there's an asterisk there. It's not like Butch Jones, no.
Yeah.
It's no, but like I'm sure you could spin it in a way where I would tolerate it. Because I think Fickle might just be he's got to be in the right place for how he operates, you know, with his Ohio. Like he has great relationships in Ohio. I do think the coolness of being the best G5 program in the country in Ohio helped him. And we don't have that anymore. We're in the Big 12 now. And it allowed him to have a completely developmental program. And he had a superstar coaching staff that might not ever be able to be replicated by himself or anybody else. And a great process of just getting local guys in here around Ohio, beating out Michigan State, IU, Purdue, UK, Louisville on recruits. I don't know if he can replicate that. I don't think he can, and I don't want to find out. But you could possibly spin me into it. So my answer is no. But it's not like, you know, Butch. If Butch came back, I'd just who knows what I'd do.
Oh, gosh. I think it's embarrassing. I don't have a lot of takes like this. And I think it mainly stems from the fact that Xavier hired Sean Miller after what he said about that program. But I think it's embarrassing that you have a coach leave, doesn't have any success. Well, I don't know about any success, but gets fired and comes back to the old school. I don't think it's embarrassing of the coach. I think it's embarrassing to the school. Like, I wouldn't want that. So that's my take on the matter. And no, I would not take Fickle. But you know who I would take? And after I just said it's embarrassing,
I would too.
I would take Brian Kelly back.
There is something though, like the Scott Frost thing's weird to me. I think the Rich Rod hire is awesome. Scott Frost, I'm like, but maybe it's like the time heals wound. Like maybe Brian Kelly and the Rich Rod thing's like it's so far gone.
Yeah. Do I blame Brian Kelly for going to Notre Dame? No. Do I blame how he did it? Yes.
Yes.
But also it is how he left, not even in terms of how he left off the field, but how you left the team. Like if Fickle would not be successful right now at UC, to your point, like you made a bunch of good points about that. Like, do I think Brian Kelly would have still had success had he stayed at UC? Absolutely. So no, I would not take Fickle. I would take Brian Kelly. And I can't believe I'm saying that on camera. But
the poll I posted was shocking to me. It was 51% would take Brian Kelly, or like Fickle and BK was like even.
Yeah.
And like in my head, it's like, no. It's like I would take BK back, but not Fickle. It feels like there should be a gap there. Like one's a Hall of Fame coach that, like if BK came here, you know he would scheme up something, and no matter how bad we are in the first year, he would find a way to be 6 wins.
Yeah.
Like he's got that dynamic of an offense. But Fickle, it'd be like rebuild mode.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess you heard my opinion. I think it would be kind of embarrassing, honestly. I don't think there's a lot to it, but I don't know. That's just my take. All right, Bearcat Matt gives us our last question in the mailbag. This is a Twitter legend. He said, I think some clarity on the subject of when UC actually becomes full share member and when they actually have access to reallocate those funds to student athletes, if it's known. Seems to be a lot of conflicting opinions on the matter. Lilly, you did your work on this one. I'm gonna give you the floor here.
Yeah, I don't know exactly like when the payments happen and all that, but I know that we are full share members on July 1st of 2025, along with UCF Houston. I think the other ones too. They might have skipped the line because they were already coming from a power conference, I believe is how it worked out. So we made $7 million in the AAC. The last 2 years we've made 18 million, then 19 million. And then next year it's going to be double or a little more. It could be 40 million. So it's about to start ramping up here and that's probably why we can pay our team next year, because you see a lot of, the TV ratings are bad for us. You see all these things that make you nervous as a Cincinnati fan in this new era of college football. But we got in the power club. We're not in the Big Ten or SEC, but we got in the club. Our payments are coming up. We've got a new facility being built, almost done. I think the facility will be done a month or two before the payment. And we're on equal footing with most of the power programs, not the SEC or Big Ten, but going forward, we are there here in July.
We're where we should be.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Lily. Hey, we're at 49 minutes. I think this is just going to be the standard.
How do we do that?
We like to go long, but you know what? We gave out a lot of awards. We tied a bow on the non-con, previewed the Big 12, had a little football talk. So yeah, hey, I'm okay going 50. I'm sure people listen to 50, but that's all we got for the midweek show, or the end of the week show this week. We'll workshop some names. We got to get like a sponsor first. Somebody hit up, if anybody owns a Dunkin' Donuts. Chuck's been reaming for the Dunkin' Donuts for the Dunkin' Bearcats. But no, that's all we got. So make sure you listen on Monday night. I'm going to be doing the post-game show with Chuck. I think you, Lily, are we going to go 3-man weave on Monday
Rumor
night?
says 3-man weave. That's the rumor.
Lily needs to get on more post-game shows. Chuck and Houdini do hold it down, and they're amazing. So it's good with them too. But I like doing them myself. So, listen to us. We'll be on the Monday night post-game show for Kansas State. And then, again, we'll have a midweek show previewing the next 3 humongous games that the Bearcats have. We're going to find out if we're real or not. So make sure you listen to us wherever you get your podcast for free. Also on YouTube. And we do a bunch of stuff on Twitter. So follow us on Twitter as well. Our handles are in the video. I'm at Nick Niehaus _ Eric Lilly's at Bearcat Bunch. That's it, guys. Go Bearcats.